On September 24th, 2022, the body of 20-year-old Kania Brunson was found in an alley, burned beyond recognition. The discovery shocked her family and community, but the true horror lay in the chain of events leading to her death. What seemed like an ordinary disappearance quickly spiraled into a chilling story of betrayal, deception, and cold-blooded murder. In the hours before her body was found, a friend of the suspect overheard a horrifying scream, "He cut my throat." But the authorities were unable to act in time. As the investigation unfolded, disturbing details emerged about Kania's relationship with Sultan Sharif, a married man with a criminal past. Their secret affair had spiraled out of control, and Kania's attempt to confront him about his lies would set off a deadly chain reaction. Within days, Sharif's life and the lives of those close to him would unravel. With his alibi falling apart and damning evidence surfacing, the question remained, would justice be served before the truth was buried forever? Stay with us as we unravel this shocking story and uncover the heartbreaking details of what led to this senseless loss.
I just pray. I don't never want to let nobody ever feel this type of pain.
Family and friends united by pain, gathering to grieve the loss of 20-year-old Kania Brunson.
It's terrible that we have to do this. I would have never thought that I would be burying my daughter before she buries me.
Brunson's parents say she could light up a room with her smile. She loved helping others. Her father tells me she just signed up for CNA classes.
She wanted everybody to stay close and wanted a lot of things out of life. She was going for it.
Dreams cut short. Police say Brunson, the victim of a homicide. Police say they found her body near North Palmer. Her father tells me her abandoned car was found about a mile away from here. Here, where police made the discovery. A week later, all that remains flowers left by a stranger to Brunson.
It's just terrible that someone could go through that, and then to know that they probably went through it by themselves and not had me or her brother or my husband or anyone that she knew that could be there, at a time like this.
So I wasn't going to stop until I find out who did this to my daughter.
Kendall Keys, WISN 12 News.
Before we begin, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from? And what are your thoughts as the story unfolds? Welcome to True Crime Tales, where we reveal the crimes that shock communities and the secrets hidden behind closed doors. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's begin. Kania Brunson, a young woman full of promise and ambition, was born and raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Raised by her mother, Jennifer Meadows, and father, Shante Brunson, Kania was part of a close-knit family. Her parents provided her with a foundation of love and support that allowed her to develop strong bonds with her siblings and other family members. She also had a stepfather, Cameron Meadows, and a close relationship with her extended family, particularly her grandmother, Charlene Litzler, added richness to her life. Charlene, in particular, was a key figure in Kania's upbringing, often describing her granddaughter as a source of constant joy, someone who brightened every room she entered. The strong family ties were evident as Kania grew up in an environment where values like love, hard work, and respect were at the forefront. Her upbringing instilled in her the strength to face the world confidently and the ability to inspire others through her kindness. With her roots grounded firmly in a supportive family dynamic, Kania had a strong sense of identity and purpose, which would guide her through her young adult years. Kania was known for her radiant personality. With an infectious smile, she was immediately approachable and affable. People found it easy to connect with her. She wasn't just someone who interacted with others. She became someone who impacted their lives. Her warmth and kindness made her not just a friend, but a mentor in her own right. Her community ties were deep. Kania had a natural ability to make people feel good about themselves. This wasn't just limited to her immediate family. She had a way of helping those around her, often teaching family members simple yet essential beauty skills like applying eyelashes or doing eyebrows. This ability to nurture and teach became a hallmark of who she was. Kania's trusting, vibrant, and determined nature made her a force to be reckoned with. Friends and family alike admired her strength and the way she approached life. At 20 years old, She was focused on building a better future for herself, and her hands-on approach to everything she did helped her stand out as someone with potential and ambition. From a young age, Kania had big dreams. She aspired to pursue multiple career paths, with interests ranging from orthodontics to veterinary medicine and cosmetology. Her passion for beauty became evident as she enrolled in beauty school just before her untimely death. Her choice to pursue cosmetology was driven by her desire to help others feel beautiful, a reflection of her inner kindness. In addition to her beauty ambitions, Kania was also signed up for Certified Nursing Assistant, CNA, classes, signaling a shift toward healthcare. This decision reflected her adaptability and her proactive approach to career planning. Her family noted that she had a lot going for her, indicating her ability to balance her dreams with concrete steps to make them a reality. At the age of 20, Kania was navigating life with a balance of education, work, and socializing. Like most young adults, she was learning how to prioritize her time, focusing on personal growth and managing relationships. However, her dreams didn't stop with her education. She also stayed involved in her community and continued to maintain close relationships with her family and friends. Kania's focus in the months leading up to September 2022 was on growth, be it personal, professional, or emotional. She was navigating relationships with the same ambition she applied to her career, unaware that one of these relationships would lead to her tragic end. Sultan Sharif, a 53-year-old man from Milwaukee, was the one who would betray Kania in the most horrific way imaginable. Married and living a double life, Sharif was a man who had hidden his true self from the people who thought they knew him. While he presented himself as a family man, his actions outside the home told a much darker story. Sharif had a wife who, at the time of the crime, provided a false alibi for him. The extent of his extramarital activities, including his relationship with Kania, was something he tried to keep hidden from his wife, adding a layer of deceit to his already questionable character. Sultan Sharif had an extensive criminal record. His offenses dated back to 1989, and by the time of Kania's murder, he had accumulated 13 prior convictions. His criminal history included serving a 10-year sentence for narcotics possession with intent to deliver in 1996. This pattern of criminality, along with his history of probation revocations, painted the picture of a man who had little regard for the law. Moreover, Sharif was known to carry 1 or 2 firearms at all times. A testimony given during his trial highlighted his dangerous tendencies and his willingness to use violence. This criminal history created a volatile background that would later play a role in the horrific events that unfolded. Living a secret life, Sharif engaged in extramarital affairs while maintaining a facade of normalcy at home. His marriage was marked by deceit, and his continued manipulation of those around him only escalated over time. Additionally, Sharif had legal restrictions placed on him due to past incidents, including a court order prohibiting contact with Kania, orders he would choose to ignore. His disregard for legal boundaries would lead to tragic consequences. Sharif's accomplice in the crime, Johnny Hopgood, was his 45-year-old brother-in-law. The two men had a close relationship, and Hopgood played a critical role in the aftermath of the crime. It was evident that Hopgood's involvement wasn't one of mere coincidence. The level of trust or possibly coercion between the two men enabled the crime's cover-up and disposal of evidence. Kania's relationship with Sultan Sharif began when she was a teenager. What began as a casual sexual relationship gradually turned into something more emotionally intense for Kania, who found herself falling in love with Sharif. For Sharif, the relationship remained casual, with no intention of emotional investment. This created an imbalance of power in the relationship, with Kania becoming increasingly attached to him, while he continued to live a double life. The relationship between Kania and Sharif was one marked by secrecy. Sharif kept his marriage hidden from Kania, further complicating the already toxic dynamic. Their interactions involved private meetings, phone calls, text messages, and clandestine rendezvous. As Kania began to learn more about Sharif's marriage and deceit, the relationship began to shift. Kania was emotionally manipulated, unaware of the full extent of his actions and lies. The manipulation led to tension, with Kania finding herself in a situation where she was caught in the middle of Sharif's secret life. Tensions between Kania and Sharif reached a boiling point as Kania discovered Sharif's lies. She reached out to Sharif's wife in an attempt to expose the affair, hoping that it would lead to Sharif's wife leaving him. These actions triggered significant conflict, possibly leading to arguments and threats that may have escalated to violence that occurred later. By the time of her death, a court order prohibited Sharif from contacting Kania. This legal restriction pointed to previous problematic interactions between the two and indicated that their relationship had crossed dangerous boundaries. Sultan Sharif's descent into violence was rooted in a toxic mixture of betrayal, fear, and control. Prosecutors believe the motive behind the brutal murder of 20-year-old Kania Brunson on September 24, 2022, stemmed from Brunson's decision to expose their affair to his wife. This act of betrayal shattered Sharif's carefully constructed facade of a stable, family-oriented life. Sharif, a married man, had been secretly involved with Brunson for several years, with their relationship becoming more complex and fraught with emotion. When Brunson revealed the affair to Sharif's wife, it threatened not only his marriage but also his public image and personal life. The exposure of the affair led to what Sharif described as his world falling apart. His life, built on deception and secrecy, was now at risk of unraveling. In his mind, the consequences of this exposure were far too severe to ignore. Sharif's motive was clear. He was driven by a primal fear of losing everything: his marriage, his family, and his control over Brunson. The act of murder became a twisted means of silencing Brunson and eliminating the threat she posed his life. In Sharif's eyes, the power dynamics that had defined their relationship were about to shift permanently, and he could not allow that to happen. Brunson's actions were seen by Sharif as a challenge to his authority and an affront to his carefully hidden double life. The fear of consequence and a desire to maintain control over the situation escalated into a violent solution. Prosecutors would later argue that Sharif killed Brunson because he feared her exposure would destroy everything he had worked to conceal. In his mind, the only way to regain control was to eliminate the source of the threat: Kania Brunson. The morning of September 24, 2022, was an ordinary day for Kania Brunson, though it would unknowingly mark the final chapter of her life. Brunson had been in regular communication with Sharif, discussing mundane matters like housing and car repairs, seemingly unaware of the resentment building inside him. Despite the tension between them, Brunson had reached out to Sharif for help with these minor issues, perhaps seeking his expertise or assistance. But what Brunson could not know was that this day would become the culmination of their tumultuous, secretive relationship. Their phone records showed a flurry of communication in the hours leading up to crime, including text discussing logistics and arrangements. Sharif had offered help, seemingly innocent at first glance, but these exchanges were laced with an underlying bitterness that was not immediately apparent to Brunson. Sharif's growing resentment towards her was evident, but it remained hidden behind the polite veneer of their conversations. He was now spiraling emotionally, knowing that Brunson's actions had threatened to expose his darkest secrets. The situation was volatile, and Brunson, despite being a part of it, was still not fully aware of the dangerous turn it was about to take. Brunson, who had always trusted Sharif, continued to engage with him, completely unaware of the deepening anger he harbored. She had no way of knowing that the man she thought she could turn to for help was preparing to take her life. The relationship between Sharif and Brunson had always been fraught with secrecy and an uneven power dynamic. While Brunson, in her youth and naivety, may have seen their bond as one of love or affection, Sharif had long viewed her as a tool to be controlled. He was a man with a history of deception and manipulation, both in his personal and criminal life. Sharif had long concealed his marriage from Brunson, fostering an environment of secrecy that ultimately led to growing resentment and distrust. The dynamics of their relationship were not only toxic, but also dangerous. Sharif's criminal history and tendency to illegally possess firearms added a volatile element to the situation. His actions were not limited to the emotional manipulation of Brunson. He was also someone who had a history of using violence to solve problems. Sharif's criminal record, which included narcotics-related charges and multiple convictions, was a precursor to the violent outcome that would eventually unfold. Brunson, unaware of these dangers, made the fateful decision to contact Sharif's wife. She hoped that by exposing the affair, she might force Sharif to confront the truth of his actions. This act, though seemingly innocent, further escalated the tension. For Sharif, the act of exposure was a bridge too far. It was a breaking point. Brunson had unknowingly pushed him into a corner, and he was now prepared to take extreme measures to preserve his life and control. The violent confrontation between Sharif and Brunson occurred that afternoon in an auto mechanic shop in Milwaukee, where Sharif had arranged to meet her. The encounter, which began as an ordinary meeting, quickly turned into a brutal attack. Eyewitness Carvister Carver, a longtime friend of Sharif, witnessed Sharif pinning Brunson down inside his vehicle. It was here that the violence began. Sharif, in a fit of rage and fear, attacked Brunson with a screwdriver, stabbing her in the throat and slashing her in a brutal act of violence. During the assault, Brunson's wrists were bound with wire or twine, limiting her ability to fight back or escape. Brunson's screams echoed in the air, and Carver, who was present at the scene, heard her cry out, "He cut my throat." Carver, despite his long-standing friendship with Sharif, refused to become an accomplice to the crime. He called 911, providing authorities with a description of Sharif's car and a partial license plate number. However, Sharif, realizing that his violent actions would soon be discovered, fled the scene before police could arrive, taking Brunson with him. As Sharif drove off, he continued his assault on Brunson in an attempt to cover his tracks. He shot her, adding to the injuries inflicted earlier. He then enlisted the help of his brother-in-law, Johnny Hopgood, to dispose of Brunson's body. The two men burned her body in a recycling bin in a secluded alley near Keefe Avenue and Palmer Street. The extreme measure of burning the body was meant to destroy any evidence of the crime, but also ensure that identification would be nearly impossible. The body was so badly burned that authorities initially had difficulty identifying it. The only clue was Brunson's abandoned vehicle, which was found a mile away from the scene. The fire, which began as a method to destroy evidence, instead became the very thing that led investigators to the crime.
Criminal charges filed this week, 1 month after the life of a 20-year-old Milwaukee woman came to a violent end. CBS 58's Michelle Fiore sat down with the victim's parents today, and she joins us now live in the studio. Michelle.
Bill, Kania Brunson's mom calls her daughter her best friend. Two men face charges, but the criminal complaint points to lies others told, and for that, Kania Brunson's mom is pressing ahead. Kania Brunson turned 20 in June, a joy to be around.
She can make you smile right away.
Brunson wanted to be an orthodontist or a vet, later learning she was good at making others look good, so she enrolled in beauty school.
She actually taught me how to put on eyelashes and do my eyebrows.
This is Brunson leaving home the morning of September 24th, texting her mom a smiley.
I wasn't even there 30 minutes and they called and told me her car was found. And I knew then, at that point, like something happened to her.
The day of the murder, police say Brunson met up with a married man she'd been seeing, Sultan Sharif. Strangely, he'd reached out to Brunson's mom a week earlier.
He goes on to say, I want to be done messing with your daughter, but she's reaching out to my wife.
September 24th, a friend of Sharif's called 911 after he says he saw Sharif on top of the victim in Sharif's car and that the female stated, "He cut my throat." She was screaming and pleading for help. Police didn't locate the two then, but hours later were called to an alley near Keefe and Palmer where Brunson had been tied, shot, and then set on fire.
She was everything to me. She was everything, and this is the most hurtful feeling.
Police interviewed a number of people, including Sharif's wife, who claimed he'd been with her the night of the murder, which the complaint says was debunked through video evidence.
And they think that they're going to be out here and live their normal life after they, helped with this.
Sharif's brother-in-law, Johnny Allen Hopgood, is charged as an accomplice.
It's still hard to believe that she's not, here with us.
Bond for Sultan Sharif is $500,000, and for Johnny Allen Hopgood, it's $50,000. Both are due back in court next week. Reporting live in the studio, Michelle Fiore, CBS 58 News.
The grisly discovery came early on the morning of September 24th, 2022. Justin Fields, a 39-year-old resident of the area, noticed smoke rising from the alley while preparing breakfast. At first, he assumed it was just trash being burned, but as the smoke thickened, he realized that something far more sinister was occurring. When he investigated further, he saw the unmistakable shape of a human body, its form barely recognizable due to the severe burning. Fields immediately called 911, reporting the disturbing sight. The discovery sent shockwaves through the community, As police quickly identified the body as that of Kania Brunson, the investigation was launched, and within hours, evidence began to surface that pointed directly to Sharif. In October 2022, Sultan Sharif was formally charged with first-degree intentional homicide, party to a crime, and mutilating a corpse following the brutal murder of 20-year-old Kania Brunson. The gravity of these charges was reflected in a substantial bond set at $500,000, underscoring the seriousness of the crime and Sharif's role in it. The charge of first-degree intentional homicide indicates that the murder was premeditated, with Sharif believed to have planned the killing of Brunson after their relationship turned sour. The charge of party to a crime suggests that Sharif was not acting alone in the crime, but rather with an accomplice, his brother-in-law, Johnny Hopgood. The third charge, mutilating a corpse, pertained to the post-murder actions, where Sharif and Hopgood attempted to destroy evidence by setting Brunson's body on fire, making it nearly impossible to identify her. The $500,000 bond was a direct result of the severity of the charges and the potential flight risk that Sharif posed, given his history of criminal behavior and previous attempts to evade authorities. This bond reflected both the violent nature of the crime and the likelihood of further investigation into Sharif's involvement. In contrast to Sharif's serious charges, Johnny Hopgood, Sharif's 45-year-old brother-in-law, was initially charged with mutilating a corpse and aiding a felon. His bond was set at $50,000, significantly lower than Sharif's, which indicated that he was viewed as less of a direct threat. Hopgood's involvement in the case escalated when he decided to assist Sharif in disposing of Brunson's body after murder. Together, they set her body on fire in an attempt to destroy evidence and hide the crime. However, in June 2023, Hopgood pleaded guilty to lesser misdemeanors, specifically resisting and obstructing an officer in exchange for time served and 10 years probation. This plea deal was made in exchange for his cooperation and testimony against Sharif during the trial. By taking a deal and cooperating with the prosecution, Hopgood helped build the case against Sharif, providing crucial insights into the aftermath of the crime, including the actions taken to conceal it. While Hopgood's involvement was undeniable, his reduced sentence and probation were designed to secure conviction for Sharif, who was seen as the mastermind behind the murder. The trial, initially expected to take place sooner, was delayed due to COVID-19 related court backlogs. This unforeseen circumstance led to frustration for Kania Brunson's family, who had already been waiting for justice for several months. The delays were a result of the global pandemic's impact on the legal system, which caused a backlog of cases in many jurisdictions, including Milwaukee County. While the delay may have prolonged the family's pain, it also gave the prosecution more time to gather further evidence and build a more substantial case. Ultimately, the trial was rescheduled for December 2023, leading to renewed hopes that the justice Kania's family had been seeking would finally be delivered. As the case progressed, investigators focused on Sharif's motive for murdering Kania. One of the key aspects that emerged during the investigation was the conflicting statements made by Sharif. These inconsistencies served as a critical aspect of the prosecution's case, exposing him as a liar and a manipulator. His shifting accounts of his whereabouts and actions on the day of Kania's murder suggested an effort to cover up his involvement. The prosecution built their case largely on circumstantial evidence. This included digital and forensic data, such as phone records, surveillance footage, and blood evidence, all of which were linked to Sharif. These pieces of evidence formed a coherent narrative, providing the jury with a clear understanding of Sharif's guilt. The physical evidence, including the presence of Kania's blood in Sharif's vehicle, was critical in cementing his role in the crime. The trial began in December 2023, lasting 6 days in the Milwaukee County Circuit Court. It was presided over by Judge David Swanson, with Assistant District Attorney Ian Vance Curzon leading the prosecution. Jason Carlos Gonzalez, an experienced criminal defense attorney, represented Sharif. The trial was expected to be a challenging one, given the complexity of the case and the amount of evidence against Sharif. The prosecution's case was based not only on physical evidence, but also on key testimonies that would paint a clear picture of Sharif's actions leading up to and following the murder. The prosecution's case was carefully constructed around Sharif's motive, which was rooted in the exposure of his affair with Kania by her family. Sharif was desperate to keep the affair hidden, and when Kania became a threat to his marriage, he decided to eliminate her. To support this argument, the prosecution presented surveillance footage showing Sharif's vehicle near the crime scene, cell phone data linking him to Kania in the hours before her death, and blood evidence found inside one of Sharif's vehicles. The case was bolstered by witness testimonies, including those of Carvister Carver, who witnessed the initial assault and called 911 to alert authorities. Detective Melvin Finkley also took the stand, explaining the significance of the evidence, including the bound wrists of the victim and the disturbing detail of the body being burned beyond recognition. This testimony was crucial in demonstrating the level of brutality involved and the deliberate efforts to cover up the crime. The trial saw Carvister Carver testify about what he witnessed that fateful day. He provided a detailed account of seeing Sharif pinning Kania down and hearing her screams as she pleaded for help. His 911 call and testimony were crucial in establishing the timeline of the events and linking Sharif directly to the crime. Additionally, Johnny Hopgood, who had struck a plea deal, testified against Sharif, providing insider knowledge of the crime's aftermath. He detailed how Sharif enlisted his help in disposing of the body and the steps they took to destroy the evidence. Forensic experts also played a key role in the trial, presenting digital evidence, including phone records that tracked the movements of both Sharif and Kania. This digital trail was instrumental in proving Sharif's involvement and ensuring the prosecution's case was comprehensive. The defense tried to argue that the evidence against Sharif was purely circumstantial and that the prosecution was engaging in tunnel vision, focusing only on Sharif's guilt while overlooking other possibilities. The defense also suggested that law enforcement may have been biased in their investigation, which led to the assumption of Sharif's involvement. Interestingly, the defense did not mention an unnamed cousin who was later referenced at sentencing. This individual, who was suggested to be potentially involved in the crime, was never raised during the trial, casting further doubt on the defense's strategy. After 6 days of testimony and legal arguments, the jury deliberated for only 45 minutes, signaling that they found the evidence against Sharif overwhelming. The speed of the deliberation reflected the strength of the prosecution's case, and the jury ultimately returned a guilty verdict on December 11, 2023. Sharif was convicted of first-degree intentional homicide, party to a crime, and mutilating a corpse. The severity of the homicide charge led to the imposition of a mandatory life sentence, which meant Sharif would spend the rest of his life in prison without the possibility of parole. Following the verdict, Kania Brunson, Kania's father, expressed relief and said that the conviction brought both healing and a sense of justice for their daughter. The lengthy legal process had taken a toll on the family, and conviction marked a significant step toward closure. While the family's journey through the legal system had been filled with frustration and heartache, they now felt that justice had been served and Kania's memory could be honored properly. On February 21st, 2024, the highly anticipated sentencing for Sultan Sharif took place before Judge David Swanson in the Milwaukee County Circuit Court. The courtroom was filled with tense anticipation as the final chapter of a brutal and heartbreaking case was about to unfold. Sultan Sharif, who had been convicted of first-degree intentional homicide and mutilating a corpse, stood before the judge, awaiting the consequences of his violent actions that led to the death of Kania Brunson. The case, which had garnered significant attention due to its shocking nature, was now approaching its conclusion. Judge Swanson, in delivering the sentence, issued a life sentence without the possibility of parole for Sharif's role in the homicide. This ruling effectively condemned Sharif to spend the rest of his life behind bars, with no chance for future freedom. Additionally, Sharif was sentenced to 12 years for mutilating Brunson's corpse, a crime that added a layer of brutality to the already vicious murder. The charges stem from the horrific way in which Sharif took Kania's life and then attempted to destroy any evidence of the crime. After stabbing and slashing Kania, Sharif and his accomplice, Johnny Hopgood, disposed of her body by burning it in an attempt to erase all traces of his involvement. The decision to burn the body compounded the cruelty of the crime, as it showed an utter disregard for Kania's dignity even after her death. In his remarks, Judge Swanson emphasized the vicious and cruel nature of Sharif's actions. The judge took into account the manner in which Kania was killed, slashed, stabbed, shot, and then burned in an attempt to destroy all evidence. His brutality, combined with his complete lack of remorse, was highlighted as central to the harsh sentence handed down. Judge Swanson also referenced Sharif's extensive criminal history, which included 13 prior convictions dating back to 1989. Sharif's long track record of criminal behavior and his lack of any meaningful reform were crucial factors in the judge's decision to deny him the possibility of parole. The judge made it clear that Sharif's history of criminal activity and disregard for the law had shown him to be a danger to society, and thus extended supervision after his release would not be an option. In light of these circumstances, Judge Swanson's decision was consistent with the gravity of Sharif's actions, reinforcing that such violence would not be tolerated in the justice system. As part of the sentencing hearing, family members of Kania Brunson were given the opportunity to deliver victim impact statements. The emotional weight of the proceedings became particularly evident as Kania's loved ones took the stand. Kania Brunson, Kania's mother, spoke directly to Sharif, calling him a monster. Her words were raw and filled with anguish as she described the pain of losing her daughter in such a violent and senseless way. She referenced her belief that Sharif would face his judgment in hell, a poignant reflection of the suffering he had caused her family. Charlene Litzler, Kania's grandmother, also addressed court, referring to Sharif as a demon who had taken her granddaughter from the world too soon. She spoke about Kania's unfulfilled dreams. The young woman had been full of potential, hoping to become a cosmetologist and healthcare professional. Litzler's statement highlighted the stark contrast between the promise of Kania's future and the reality of her untimely death. The impact of Kania's death was evident in every word spoken by her family. Their grief and anger were palpable, but they also emphasized that they were committed to seeking justice, even if it couldn't bring Kania back. In a final, unsuccessful attempt at absolving himself, Sharif took the stand and denied any involvement in the murder. He claimed he was miles away from the scene of the crime on the night of September 24th, 2022, and attempted to implicate an unnamed cousin, a claim that had never been raised during the trial. Sharif's defense, as expected, failed to sway the court. His denials only served to highlight the lack of remorse and dishonesty that had been evident throughout the investigation and trial. His attempt to shift blame onto another individual was met with skepticism from the family and the court. Despite expressing sympathy for Kania's death, his words seemed hollow and insincere, considering the horrific nature of his crime and the lack of any true accountability for his actions. Assistant District Attorney Ian Vance Curzon emphasized the heinous nature of the crime and the toxic relationship dynamics that had led to Kania's murder. He detailed how Sharif's involvement with Kania, a young woman much younger than him, was marked by manipulation, secrecy, and power imbalances. Vance Curzon made it clear that Sharif's motives were driven by fear of exposure, his desire to maintain control over his life, and the deep-seated anger that ultimately led him to take Kania's life. The prosecutor argued for a maximum sentence, pointing out that Sharif's actions not only robbed Kania of her life, but also destroyed the lives of everyone who loved her. The brutality of the crime, combined with Sharif's inability to accept responsibility, reinforced the need for a strict and uncompromising sentence. As the legal proceedings came to a close, the aftermath of Kania's death continued to affect her family and the community at large. On September 24th, 2023, exactly 1 year after Kania's tragic death, her family held a balloon release at McGovern Park in Milwaukee, a symbolic act to honor her memory. Pink balloons, Kania's favorite color, were released into the sky as the family gathered to remember her vibrant life. The family expressed ongoing grief, but they also found solace in the justice served and the impact Kania had on those around her. In a Facebook post following Sharif's sentencing, Charlene Litzler celebrated the justice that had been served, acknowledging that while no punishment could bring Kania back, the verdict was a step toward healing. Kania's legacy was not only tied to her untimely death, but also to the love and joy she had spread during her life. Kania's murder sparked wider discussions about the dangers of toxic relationships and the importance of awareness in communities. Her case shone a light on the often hidden issues of domestic violence, grooming, and power imbalances within relationships. The community, particularly young women, began engaging in conversations about healthy boundaries and red flags in relationships, seeking to prevent similar tragedies from occurring in the future. Social media tributes and community posts kept Kania's memory alive as people continued to honor her spirit both in public memorials and online discussions. As of August 30th, 2025, no new legal developments have been reported regarding the case. Sharif had 20 days from his sentencing to file an appeal, but no such appeal had been filed by that deadline. Recent YouTube recaps and online discussions revisited the case, but there were no new facts or updates to the case. The legal conclusion of Sharif's trial marked the finality, a long and painful chapter for Kania's family. Kania Brunson is remembered as a symbol of lost potential and youthful ambition. Her story serves as a tragic reminder of the dangers of toxic relationships and the need for heightened awareness in today's world. Despite the loss, Kania's family and the wider community continue to honor her legacy through memorials and advocacy, ensuring that her life and the lessons from her death will not be forgotten. Her story underscores the importance of justice, family support, and the fight against abuse, all of which continue to guide those who loved her in their ongoing quest for peace. If you found this story as gripping and heartbreaking as we did, don't forget to like this video and share it with others. And if you want to hear more true crime stories that uncover the mysteries behind these tragic events, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest stories, updates, and discussions. Thank you for joining us on this journey to seek justice and explore the truth. Together, we can make a difference. Until next time, stay safe and stay aware.